Hello, this is Broyer, and welcome to a fairly unusual video for me. I'm going to be comparing two brand new games that have come out very recently. Actually, both of these games are still in open beta testing at this time. But ultimately, this seems to be the year of the auto battler, as we have seen several entries come along and take the world and Twitch by storm. What is an auto battler, you may ask? Well, the original was a mod for Dota 2 called Auto Chess. And though you may have to squint a bit to see where the origins of this name come from, it does provide a slight hint as to what you will see. Auto battlers are played on a board, similar to a chessboard, and they have pieces that perform different roles, again, similar to chess, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. The auto part of the name is where the other clue comes from. Your pieces battle on your board in automatic fashion, with the only intervention on the player part being, which piece you select and where they go and what gear you may put on them. After that, you get to sit back and watch how your between-match strategy and plenty of RNG fare against your opponents. The two biggies on the scene right now are made by the two granddaddies of the MOBA genre, Valve, makers of Dota 2, and Riot, makers of League of Legends. And it makes perfect sense why these players have been so quick to jump into this genre. They both have pre-existing heroes, art, and other components that are needed to be successful. I do want to take a moment and pay respect to DOTA, who was the original makers of the Auto Chess mod and have now created their own standalone version that keeps the Auto Chess name. You can find this game on both Android and iOS platforms. I do think their version is still really good and will continue to have a strong following, but I will personally be focusing a bit more on the offerings by Valve and Riot, mainly because they are both available on PC. So which of these games is better? Well, spoiler alert, the better game is the one that you personally prefer to play. I know that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, but, I'm going to be laying out some of my opinions here of what I think is better, but in the end, whichever one you feel like is better, which one you enjoy playing, is honestly the better one for you. It's the same argument that can be had between League of Legends and Dota 2. Which one's better? Well, League of Legends has a much more popular following. Dota 2 has a really big following. I mean, you can't say either one of those games is unsuccessful in their own right. And it just really comes down to which one you prefer. It seems like most people prefer League of Legends for whatever reason, but that does not mean that Dota 2 is a broken game or anything like that. It's massively successful, and if I think I remember right, their tournaments are some of the biggest tournaments in the esports world. So obviously, Dota 2 is also equally successful. Small disclaimer before I start. I have minimal experience with either League of Legends or Dota 2. I played League of Legends years ago when it first came out quite a bit, but was never really too serious about it. And obviously the game has changed a lot since then. I have never actually played Dota 2. I have played the original Dota mod for Warcraft 3, but I don't know if that really counts that much. That being said, I have played the original Auto Chess mod quite a bit, as well as the subsequent Underlords and Teamfight Tactics offerings. I am by no means an expert, which is why I'm not going to go into strategy here, but instead I'm going to focus a bit more on the general presentation and enjoyability of the games themselves. Also, for fairness, I should point out that both games are currently in open beta, which means they are both very playable, but there's also varying degrees of completeness here. So it's possible one or the other may begin to gain a little bit more of an edge in certain categories as more updates come out in the future. First up, a few areas where the games are basically identical. They both offer 8 total players to battle it out. They both present the player with a pack of 5 heroes to choose from. They both offer items to power up your heroes, though there are some key differences here that we will get into in a moment. They both offer a very near identical gold system. Heroes cost an increasing amount of gold from 1 to 5. You gain 10% interest for every 10 gold, up to 5 gold interest at 50 gold or higher. Recycling your available pack costs 2 gold, and leveling costs 5 gold for 4 XP. Speaking of leveling, each level allows you to place an additional hero, with level 1 being 1 hero and level 2 being 2 heroes, and so on and so forth. They both have a concept of each hero having 2 to 3 alliances, where varying amounts of combinations of the same type will give you additional bonuses on top of the individual hero abilities. Most battles are against opposing players, with the loser losing an amount of health based on the number and quality of the winner's remaining living heroes. There is also periodic creep rounds or NPC rounds against computer packs that offer the player a chance to gain more new items to empower their heroes even more. And possibly the most important similarity is that in both games, you merge 3 identical heroes into stronger versions of themselves. 3 tier 1 heroes make a tier 2 hero, and 3 tier 2s make an all-powerful tier 3 hero. Essentially, if you know how to play one of these games, you can probably figure out how to play the other one with minimal effort. So now for the differences. First up, graphics. Both games have very clean graphics that make it easy to see what is going on, as well as really cool animations and spell effects to make the auto part of the whole ordeal very enjoyable to watch. That being said, the choice here isn't really that close in my opinion. If Underlords is like a really good, high definition television, then Teamfight Tactics is like a 4K television. I really feel like Teamfight Tactics really takes this graphical quality to the next level. It just looks absolutely beautiful. I enjoy watching the matches a whole lot. There's a lot there to them, and I think they've done a really, really good job here. Next up, the UI. Both games offer similar layouts with the board in the middle of the screen, your bench at the bottom edge of the board, your opponents and their health listed on one side or the other, with your hero combinations listed on the other side and things like that. But also the hero packs also look very similar, with only real difference being that Underlords allows you to hide the hero pack screen, which is good since it does kind of cover up the board. And Teamfight Tactics has the pack kind of pinned to the bottom of the screen. Ultimately for me, the edge goes to Underlords. I personally think that the Teamfight Tactics screen is a bit too busy, where Underlords allows me to hide and show different components based on what I want to see at the times. Underlords also has a clear damage and healing meter, which can really help show how effective different heroes and combinations are playing out. Essentially, to me, less is more, and with Underlords being designed to also be played on mobile devices, their UI works really, really well. Next up, let's jump into some of the gameplay elements. The multiplayer component, for example, might kind of also be called, trollability component, if you want to say that. Which game offers a more enjoyable multiplayer experience? Essentially, they both do the same basic thing in the end. They pit your heroes against your opponents, and eventually someone will be left alive with the presumably better array of heroes, or at least the set that was able to best counter the other heroes they played against. The biggest difference here is that in Underlords, you don't actually fight the other player. You are fighting a copy of their heroes, and a copy of your heroes is off fighting on someone else's board. Often you're not fighting the same person who is fighting you, and this can lead to a little bit of a disconnect since you aren't seeing the same thing as the other person. It's often that you could fend off a person's army on your board just to find out that they actually survived against your army on their board just because of how the RNG and the fight itself went. In Teamfight Tactics, however, what you see is what you get. If you're fighting against another player, they are fighting against you as well, and you see the same thing as they are. This means that if you are fighting against a buddy and you just destroyed him, he literally feels that pain himself as he watches his character take all that damage to the face. There is an extra opportunity for multiplayer interactivity and trolling in the Teamfight Tactics carousel, as they call it. Let me use quotes there, but more on that in a little bit. In the end, the edge here goes to Teamfight Tactics. I'm only giving them an edge win here because personally, this part of the game doesn't matter quite as much to me, and I still find just as much enjoyment from dominating wins in Underlords as in Teamfight Tactics, but I can definitely see where this could be a big selling point for many people. I'm not going to touch too much on hero or like the combination and alliance differences because they're essentially the same in a lot of ways. I mean, they aren't identical, of course, but they operate in a similar enough manner that it really just comes down to flavor more than which is better in this case. Items, however, are different enough to warrant a discussion. Teamfight Tactics follows a similar pattern to the original Auto Chess mod in that you get a varying amount of items from creeps. Sometimes you get a couple, sometimes you may get none. You can also put multiple items on each hero, and many of the items can combine into bigger and better items. I should also point out that Teamfight Tactics also grants items that come attached to the heroes that you get in the carousel round, so you'll never really go the whole game with 0 items, but it's often that you might not get quite as many as maybe one of your other opponents. Underlords chose to go a different route. After each creep round, whether you win or lose, you are offered a selection of 3 items, or more if you got a certain item in one of the previous rounds, and you get to choose one. If you lose creep round, 2 of those items get crossed out, but you're at least still guaranteed 1 item after each creep round. Underlords only allows one item per hero as well, but you can move those items around, which is something you can't do in Teamfight Tactics unless you sell the hero that is wearing the item first. Another big difference in Underlords is that they also offer global items. These aren't items that you equip on a hero, but are instead a permanent buff that lasts the rest of the game. These buffs can do anything from giving you more or better item choices in the future rounds to giving you buffs to varying alliance combinations that can really help shape how the rest of your match plays out. My personal opinion is the edge here goes to Underlords. I like the idea that the items are guaranteed, as well as I really like the global item concept. The RNG components to items in Teamfight Tactics actually carries over my least favorite part of the original auto chess mod. There's already plenty of RNG in which heroes show up in your packs and things like that. I personally don't need the extra RNG that comes with getting half as many items as my opponent. The board is another key difference, and one that will be very obvious the first time you play, where Underlords uses a square 8x8 board, similar to what you would see in chess or checkers. Teamfight Tactics instead uses a 7x6 hexagonal board, which in theory, as we have learned from Civilization, when they swap from squares to hexes, a hexagonal board is ultimately more fair when it comes to distances, such as for spells and abilities. An ability with a range of 3 hexes will be the exact same distance no matter which direction you go. On a square board, however, you technically get a bit more range on the diagonals, where 3 squares at a diagonal is actually further away than the 3 squares directly in front of your hero, for example. Surprisingly, even though I have come to prefer hexes in Civilization, I actually prefer the square board in Underlords. That being said, I will give the edge to Teamfight Tactics here. I do think hexes are ultimately better for a game like this, though I do wish the Teamfight Tactics would adopt a slightly larger board, as it often feels very claustrophobic on the board currently. And as I said, I still personally prefer the Underlords board layout, and maybe that's because there's just a bit more space and less, there's more room to kind of maneuver and strategize and stuff like that. So I think if Teamfight Tactics board was bigger, I might actually prefer that one more in this case. Finally, for some of the additional extras that each game provides. First off, a big one for Underlords is that right out of the gate, it has a mobile version of the game. The mobile version is the exact same as the PC version, and everyone, whether on mobile or PC, plays together. I've even heard that you could technically start a game on one device, say your PC, and then log back in on your mobile device to finish the game if you needed to, go somewhere or something, and vice versa. Another big component of Underlords is the game size and the load times. Underlords is a complete standalone game, so it only needs to load the assets that it uses. This means that it is a small download and takes virtually no time to load into a new game. Teamfight Tactics, however, is still attached to the League of Legends launcher and can take several minutes to start a match, since everyone needs to load all of the assets each and every time. Teamfight Tactics has an interesting game component, affectionately labeled the carousel by the community. Ultimately, I think the idea they were going for here is excellent. I really like the idea of getting to draft a hero every few rounds in a pool that is shared with my opponents. This means that if someone else gets to draft ahead of me, they could take a hero that I really want to complete one of their own sets, or even worse, they could simply take a hero to block me from finishing mine. I think this really adds to the multiplayer interactivity of the game and is a huge bonus. That being said, I honestly hate the execution of this idea. I wish it was just a flat draft where each person got to pick from a set of stationary heroes. Instead, it spins around in a circle, hence the carousel name, and your character picks whichever hero it touches first. This can actually mean that if you're not careful, it is possible to accidentally touch the wrong hero and come away with something you didn't want. To me, this is kind of a fairly ridiculous system that it could have been really good. I'm sure there are plenty of people that love the carousel the way it is, but it's probably one of my biggest gripes about the game, second only to the RNG and the items. In summary, I think both of these games are excellent and similar enough that jumping from one to the other is fairly straightforward to do. League of Legends is by far the most popular MOBA out there, and a lot of that popularity came from the fact that it was honestly a much easier game to jump into. That's not to say there isn't plenty of complexity, but it often seemed to me that Dota 2 was just complex for complexity's sake. Of course, even though Dota 2 is pretty far behind League, it is still one of the most successful games out there, and obviously doing just fine for itself. As far as their respective auto battlers, somehow I actually think the two companies swapped places here. I think Teamfight Tactics has a level of complexity above where Underlords is at, and for many of the same reasons the League of Legends won the MOBA competition, I actually think Underlords is the winner so far in the auto battler world. Don't get me wrong, Teamfight Tactics is definitely very popular and likely will stay more popular than Underlords for quite some time, maybe forever. But I think between the easier entry point as well as the mobile offering that DOTA Underlords has, for me, it is the clear winner here. I personally think it is the better game, but again, that's not to say that Teamfight Tactics isn't great. Auto battlers are here to stay for quite some time, and it's exciting to see both of these developers throw their hats into the ring so quickly. I think there's just enough strategy in both of these games to make either of them a lot of fun for an old strategy gamer like me. It will be really exciting to see how both of these games develop as they continue their beta phase and move into full release. It will also be exciting to see what other companies out there with a large assortment of heroes, what they do, if they jump into this world as well. Kind of looking at you, Blizzard. But anyway, that's my opinion. Again, complete opinion. This is not to say either of these games is bad by any stretch of the imagination. And again, I want to give clear and distinct respect to DOTA for the original auto chess mod. I thought that was incredible seeing that mod pop up in Dota 2, which itself was a mod to Warcraft 3. So this is a funny and crazy cycle of events here. But I do think in this world, it's going to either be Underlords and Teamfight Tactics that ultimately takes the win here. Currently, it's Teamfight Tactics. A lot of that might be because of the overwhelming popularity of League of Legends itself. But we'll have to see what happens over time. And again, my personal opinion, I think Underlords is just easy to jump into. And it's often that I will jump into a game on my PC, play through a match, and then be like, it's time to go to bed. And then I'll be sitting in my bed for 3 more hours playing it on my cell phone. So it has been a whole lot of fun playing that game. But we'll see what things come as they develop more and more. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure everybody has their own opinion about all of these things. Please keep the conversations a little bit civil. Let's not fight over here about which one's better or whatever. As far as like, let's not insult the other. Let's put it that way. Obviously, I welcome comments about which one you think is better, but let's try not to insult the other ones because they're both obviously successful companies with successful MOBAs and probably going to be very successful auto battlers. So I think they're both great games in their own rights, but I am looking forward to seeing what people's opinions of the different aspects of the games are and which ones you enjoy playing the most or which ones do you enjoy seeing the most if you like watching other people play them as well. Anyway, I do appreciate you watching this relatively unusual video for me. I don't usually do a lot of comparison videos like this, but please like this video if you did like this and you want to see maybe some more comparisons or more thoughts of this type of stuff, or if you want me to see me play either one of these games a bit more, let me know in the comments below as well. Again, thank you again. I do appreciate it. Goodbye.